The first thing I saw was the red. Not the water, not the trees, not the soft glow from the porch light I'd left on a week ago. Just a bright red sheet of paper flapping against my front door like a warning flag. I killed the engine and sat there for a second, headlights washing over the porch. The lake smell pushed in through the cracked window. Damp wood algae, that quiet, earthy cold. And somewhere in the dark, insects pinged against the glass. My keys jingled in my hand, louder than they had any right to be, because my fingers wouldn't stop shaking. ULAWFELOCSUPNT, the notice screamed in all caps when I got close enough to read it. Why you must, it's at A2 72 a URS. New owner has filed for possession. Underneath, in smaller print, new owner Lakeside Holdings LLC. I'd never heard the name in my life. This house was mine. It was the one place they didn't reach. I peeled the paper back from the tape, feeling the rough grain of the door I'd sanded myself last summer. At the bottom was a law firm's name and a phone number. I dialed before I could talk myself out of it. Law offices of Garrison and Tate. A bored receptionist answered. I'm standing at my own front door looking at your eviction notice, I said, forcing my voice to stay level. There's been a mistake. I own this property. She asked for the address, typed for a moment, and then her tone shifted into something practiced and distant. According to our file, ma'am, the property was sold to Lakeside Holdings LLC last month. You're listed as current occupant without ownership interest. That's impossible. I have the deed in my name. She didn't argue. She didn't care. County records show title transferred. The recorded deed bears your signature. My heart dropped in that slow, heavy way, like missing a step in the dark. I had never signed anything to sell this house. Without thinking, I hit end and called my parents. Habit, or maybe reflex. My mother picked up on the second ring. Oh, honey, are you at the lake? Her voice was syrupy with concern. We meant to tell you not to go there. It's not safe for you to maintain that place alone. There was a rustle, then my father on speaker, warm and authoritative. We handled it for you. It's better this way. You can't afford to keep two properties, and you're too trusting. We talked to a buyer who's connected. Patronizing, like they were explaining a weather report, like my house was a bad haircut they'd fixed behind my back. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air was stale and cool. The faint smell of coffee lingered. On the kitchen counter, under the little ceramic bowl where I kept spare keys, sat a stack of opened mail, all addressed to me, all slit neatly along the top. My parents had the spare key. Of course they did. On top was a notice of transfer and payoff from the bank. We are pleased to inform you that your mortgage has been paid in full. It read, and any surplus funds have been wired to your designated joint account ending in 3412. Joint account. My name and my parents' bank's logo in the same sentence. I'd never opened any joint account with them. I'd gone out of my way not to. I flipped through the eviction packet again, slower this time. The last page listed the grantor as me, in all caps, and the authorized signatory for the buyer as my father. Below that, a notary stamp, a date, and a version of my signature that looked like mine if you didn't know me. A neat line of text underneath. Seller acknowledged full understanding of transaction in presence of both parents. They hadn't just sold my house. They'd created a paper trail where I begged them to. Standing in the kitchen of the only place I'd ever felt safe from them, I realized the real question wasn't how they stole it. It was how they'd convinced the entire system I had asked them to. People like to say I'm lucky to be an only child. They picture extra love, extra attention. They don't see how, in my family, attention was just surveillance with better lighting. Growing up, everything was about family image. My parents used that phrase the way other people say grace. Remember, we have a reputation. My mother would murmur before school events, her nails straightening my collar hard enough to hurt. My father's favorite line was, "We paid for your college, so you owe us." Any attempt at independence was dismissed as my face, something slightly embarrassing they were waiting out, like a bad haircut. Money was never just money. It was leverage. When I needed my first car, I had saved enough for a beat-up sedan. My father insisted on co-signing for a better rate and then put the insurance in his name. At first, it felt like help. The first time I said no to something he wanted, he dangled the keys and said evenly, "What can take the car if you don't do as we say?" That was the day I learned that any document with his name and mine together was not security, it was a leash. When I closed on the lake house, I did it in secret. It wasn't glamorous, peeling paint, questionable plumbing, but it was mine, bought with my own savings and approved on my own credit. When I finally told them, they were offended I hadn't invited them to the closing. At the next family dinner, my father called it a glorified shed, while my mother chirped, "Well, at least it's in the family now." In the same breath, she suggested I add them to the deed. So if something happens to you, it doesn't get stuck in probate. I smiled, said I'd think about it, and quietly changed the locks the next week. But they still had an old spare from when they helped paint. Before I moved furniture in, months later, they invited me over to help with tax forms. The dining table was covered in neatly stacked papers, property tax rebate forms, insurance updates, things printed off websites. They spoke slowly as if to a child. "Everything is so complicated." My mother sighed. "You'll mess it up and lose money." My father slid an extra sheet toward me. "This just lets us talk to your bank if you're ever traveling." I skimmed enough to see the words, authorization, and account access, and pushed it back. "I'll handle my accounts myself," I said. Their faces hardened for a second, then relaxed into tight smiles. They backed down, at least to my face. Now, in the lake house kitchen, I opened the rest of the mail with a different kind of caution. A county assessor notice confirmed it, title transferred to Lakeside Holdings LLC. A wire confirmation addressed to me referenced a joint account ending in numbers I didn't recognize, beneath my parents' bank logo. I called the bank. After verifying my identity, the rep cheerfully confirmed there was indeed a joint account in my name and my father's, opened in branch 2 weeks ago, with both of you present. I had never stepped inside that branch. My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. I set my phone to record my own notes and started working. I photographed every letter and the eviction notice, front and back. I slid the already opened envelopes into a Ziploc bag, writing the date and opened before receipt. On the plastic, I wrote down the joint account number, the opening date, the branch location. Then I called the county recorder's office. A bored voice told me a quitclaim deed had been recorded, granting my parents power to sell on my behalf. Signed by me at a notary back in my hometown. And since you didn't contest within 10 days of the notice we mailed, the clerk added, the transfer is already considered effective. I never saw that notice because it had been sitting, already opened, on my parents' kitchen counter. If I didn't unwind this on the record, the system would remember only one story, that I was just another dumb kid who signed something and lost everything. The next morning, I traded the sound of water against the dock for the buzz of fluorescent lights and the clack of a ticket dispenser. The county recorder's building looked exactly like every other government office I'd ever seen. Metal detector at the door, worn linoleum, a wall of glass windows with tired clerks behind them. I took a number, B42, and sat on a molded plastic chair, clutching my folder like it was a life raft. When my number finally blinked on the screen, I stepped up to the window. "I need copies of any deeds recorded for this property in the last year," I said, sliding a paper with the lake house address under the glass. The clerk, a woman with gray streaks in her bun and reading glasses halfway down her nose, typed for a moment, then nodded. "We've got a quitclaim from earlier this year and a warranty deed to an LLC. She printed both and handed them to me. Seeing my own name in bold print at the top of the quitclaim made my stomach flip. The signature under it looked like mine if you glanced fast. Same general shape. But my middle initial was wrong, and the curve of the last letter started in the wrong place. I'd spent years signing forms for my job. I knew exactly how my hand moved. "Was this notarized here?" I asked, keeping my voice even. She checked her screen. "No, notarized offsite. UPS store on Maple. Notary ID." She squinted, then frowned. Huh, what? She lowered her voice slightly. We've had an internal memo about this notary ID. There have been issues. Family transfers, questions about whether people actually appeared in person. She looked up at me more closely now. Is that what you're saying? You didn't sign this. For the first time in 24 hours, something like hope flickered in my chest. I didn't. And I wasn't at any UPS store on that date. She introduced herself as Mr. Hall, short for Ms. Holly, she joked dryly, and leaned closer to the mic. Every notarization is supposed to have a journal entry, ID checked, in-person appearance. If you file a fraud allegation, we can request that journal. It goes on record. She pulled out a single-page form. Affidavit of forgery or fraudulent deed. The header read. She walked me through it, described the forgery, attach ID, attach prior deed. Once this is recorded, we flag the title, she said. No further sales or liens go through without a court looking at it. Hey, she paused, correcting herself mid-sentence. And if your parents did this, there might be a financial exploitation angle. Adult Protective Services has a unit for family financial abuse. It's not just for the elderly. I left with the form and a checklist, then drove straight to the bank branch where the mysterious joint account had been opened. Inside, it smelled like coffee and printer ink. A security guard watched the lobby while soft music played over muted TVs, cycling financial news. I need to speak with the branch manager. I told the receptionist. It's about a joint account opened in my name without my in-person consent. In a glass office, the manager pulled up the account. We have you and your father listed, he said. Opened 2 weeks ago. He clicked another window. Here are the signature cards. He turned the screen toward me. My name, my address, and a signature that again looked almost right, but not quite. Underneath was a typed note. Customer's father's stated daughter couldn't attend and had pre-signed forms. On paper, I looked exactly like the idiot my parents always said I was. Do you have CCTV from that day? I asked. And did anyone here verify my ID? His expression shifted. He checked a log, then his brow furrowed. We have video of your parents meeting with a banker. No sign of you. And it looks like we don't have a scanned ID on file for you. Just your father's. He sat back, the tone of the conversation changing. That's a problem. This may be a KYC issue on our side. I can place a freeze on outgoing transfers pending investigation. He glanced at another screen and added, There's a large incoming wire scheduled today from a title company. The proceeds of a property sale. It's set to hit this joint account and then split into your parents' savings this evening. He looked at me. If you want to dispute, I need a written fraud claim today. Otherwise, this wire executes at midnight. I filled out the claim with deliberate, careful handwriting, attached copies of my ID, and watched him print a stamped confirmation for me. By sundown, I'd planted fraud flags at the county and at the bank. But flags weren't verdicts. The real question was whether a judge would believe my evidence over the story of the loving parents, who had already taught the system to read my forged name as my own. Filing the affidavit of forgery felt less like signing a form and more like stepping over a line I couldn't uncross. Back at the recorder's office, Mr. Hall stamped it with a heavy thunk that echoed off the glass. This puts a cloud on title, he said, sliding my copy back. Anyone trying to touch this property now will see there's a dispute. Next step is a quiet title action in court to wipe out the bad deeds. He scribbled a phone number on a sticky note. Legal Aid Clinic. They know this stuff. Take your documents and tell them Hall from Record sent you. For the first time, my mess was written into systems that weren't controlled by my parents. I had case numbers now, not just stories they could spin. At the clinic, a tired but sharp-eyed attorney named Kim tried to take it all in. Eviction, forged quitclaim, shady notary, joint account, wire on hold. She tapped her pen against a blank motion form. We're asking for a temporary restraining order, she said, to stop the eviction and freeze any transfer until we sort this out. We'll allege forgery and financial exploitation by family members. Hearing the words out loud made me feel both sick and strangely solid. The expedited hearing was scheduled within days. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood, paneled and fluorescent, lit with a seal over the judge's bench that suddenly meant more to me than any family crest my parents pretended we had. I sat beside Kim at one table. Across from us, the attorney for Lakeside Holdings adjusted his cufflinks. The same man who'd toasted my father at golf club dinners when I was a teenager. My parents sat behind him, dressed in their pillar of the community uniforms, my father in a conservative suit, my mother in pearls, her face arranged into wounded concern. The LLC's lawyer opened smoothly. Your Honor, this is simply a case of a seller with cold feet. She sold the house. Now she's having remorse. The documents are in order. Kim stood and laid our stack on the table. Respectfully, Your Honor, the documents are not in order. She walked the judge through the affidavit of forgery, the bank's fraud hold, the note that no ID had ever been taken for me at the joint account opening, the absence of video showing me at the branch. Then she handed up the notary's journal entry the court had subpoenaed. It showed a scribbled version of my name, no ID type or number recorded, and a timestamp that matched a morning when my payroll records showed me clocked in at my job in another city. The judge's questions were quiet, but they cut through the performance. Why is there no evidence the seller ever appeared before the notary? She asked, looking over her glasses at the LLC's attorney. Why was a joint account opened without her identification? And why are the sale proceeds directed primarily to the parents, who were never on the original deed? My mother broke first. She started crying, voice trembling just enough. We only did this because she's irresponsible, she said. She leaves the house empty. She could get robbed. She doesn't understand contracts. We were protecting her. My father added, with exasperated affection, we've always managed her paperwork. She hates reading fine print. We've handled everything for her since she was a teenager. I felt anger flare, but under it, something like vindication. He didn't even hear what he was admitting, that this wasn't a one-time favor. It was a pattern of owning my life on paper. Kim didn't raise her voice. Your Honor, she bought the house alone. She paid the mortgage alone. There is no power of attorney, no written authority granting them permission to sell. Managing someone's paperwork is not the same as owning their assets. The judge leaned back, considering. Then she spoke slowly, each order like a door closing behind my parents. She issued a temporary stay on the eviction. No lockouts, no removals. She ordered that no further action be taken on the sale until a full, quiet title case could be resolved. She directed the bank to hold all sale proceeds in a frozen status pending that outcome. And finally, she referred the matter to the district attorney's financial crimes unit, noting on the record that the notary's conduct raises serious concerns and that the notary board should be notified. In the hallway afterward, my parents moved quickly, as if proximity might reset everything. We can still fix this as a family, my mother said, grabbing my arm. Just sign a proper transfer to us, and we'll deal with the LLC. No more courts. I gently pulled my arm back. From today, I said, keeping my voice low and steady, if you contact my bank, the county, or any institution in my name, I will treat it as harassment and evidence of ongoing fraud. We're done doing anything on trust. The grief settled in my chest like a stone. It felt like a funeral for parents I'd never really had. But under it was a fierce, unfamiliar self-respect. As Kim and I walked toward the exit, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, then at me. That was the DA's office, she said. They want to schedule an interview. They think your parents and this notary might be part of a bigger pattern. The next time I came back to the lake house, the porch was quiet, bare wood and soft light. No red notice screaming from the door. Inside, the only paper taped up was the court order I'd stuck on the inside of a kitchen cabinet, where I'd see it every time I reached for a glass. The fraudulent deeds declared void, title restored to me. My name, properly mine again, in black and white. I walked through each room slowly, fingers trailing over the back of the couch, the windowsill where I'd once watched a storm roll in. This place had always been my symbol of freedom, chip paint and all. To my parents, It had been nothing but an asset, another line on a spreadsheet they thought they controlled. Same house, two completely different meanings. This time, I treated it like what it was, not just an escape, but a responsibility. I changed every lock and handed the only spare keys to a friend who had never once asked me what my credit score was. I added a fraud alert to my credit file, set up transaction alerts with my bank so my phone would light up if anyone tried to move money in my name. Through my attorney, I filed a formal no-contact request. My parents were not to approach any institution on my behalf. I even wrote to the recorder's office, asking that any future document bearing my name trigger an ID verification call directly to me. At home, I started a paper shield binder. In it went copies of the court orders, the bank's fraud investigation results, the DA's acknowledgement letter. It felt almost ceremonial, sliding each page into its sleeve. Through a cousin, I heard my parents' version that I had stolen from them and put them under investigation. I let the story travel without me. I sent the actual findings only to a few relatives I trusted. Anyone else who preferred the performance over the record wasn't my concern anymore. One afternoon, my attorney forwarded an email. The DA had expanded the investigation. There were at least 2 other family deals my parents had done with elderly relatives, using the same notary. I printed the email, added it to the binder, then closed it and looked out at the lake. My parents always believed they could rearrange my life with a few signatures behind my back, and that I'd be too naive to notice. I used to think avoiding paperwork would keep the peace. Now I know the same paper they used to erase me is exactly what I needed to finally make their lies disappear. If you've ever had family twist papers or systems against you, remember, you're not crazy and you're not powerless. Document everything, ask questions, and don't be afraid to let the system see the truth. If you want more stories like this, about people quietly fighting back against toxic families with evidence, boundaries, and the law, stick around, comment, and subscribe, and learn how to build your own paper shield.